Hello everybody, today we're doing a video for GTA Car Kits in a 2015 Mercedes E-Class. And as you can see, we installed our CarPlay module on this vehicle and we're going to show you today how to do it. And as you can see, it's paired to our iPhone wirelessly. So you're able to control CarPlay with the original controls of this vehicle. You're also able to do Siri, and we wired a special microphone and the A pillar. And this is standard CarPlay. You can do Google Maps, Waze, and etc. And if you want to go back to your original system, you just hold the back button and everything is working, nothing gets disabled. Your rear view camera will still work the same way. We're going to go ahead and show you how to install this module on your Mercedes E-Class. So the tools that you're going to need is a 10mm with an extension. We're also going to be using a T20, a T27. We also another T20 but on a screwdriver type, and these are our panel removal tools. And also two flathead screwdrivers, one is a small one is a bigger one. So first we're gonna take our hook tool and we're gonna start removing this trim piece. So what you're gonna do first is gonna get inside into this middle slot and you're gonna release two clips. So there's one right here and there's one on the other side. Once you release them, it releases the two locks so it can come out. So now we have our panel removal tool and we're gonna get underneath here to start releasing this panel. Once you have it released in the middle here, we're gonna take our hook, and there's two metal hooks that you have to unhook. You just grab them with this tool and you pull them down. So there's one. And here's the other. With them released, you're gonna continue going towards the passenger door. Once you get to the vent, you carefully release everything. At this point we can close the door. Once everything is loose, right here by the driver, there's one clip that you gotta get from underneath. You click it and it releases, and I'll show you right now what I meant. This is the clip I was talking about. So I got underneath and I unclipped it. And here we have three clips. Just gonna release them. Now we can put this away. So now we're gonna remove the radio, and there's two bolts holding on top, and we're gonna use our T20. And as you can see, I'm using a short wrench and a ratchet because you can't get with anything longer here. We're gonna go ahead and remove these two screws. So when you're removing them, they're quite long, so keep unscrewing them until they come out. At this point we can remove the radio, and you kind of grab it, wiggle it, and it will pull out. Once you have it about this distance over here, you're gonna see there's a clip and a connector which you have to undo because that's as far as it pulls out. So we're gonna take our hook tool, we're gonna press it and release it. Carefully take the radio out, and first we're gonna disconnect the main harness, and there's a clip underneath, and then you lift this bracket and it will come out. Now we're also gonna use our flathead screwdriver in order to help us get these connectors off. So you press on the clip underneath and release one by one so the clips look like here. Again, there's a clip underneath. And at this point, we're gonna put the radio away. So our main goal is to now remove the glove box, because we're gonna be routing all the wires there and we're gonna be hiding the module there. So to remove the glove box, we're gonna start off by removing these two screws on top, and they're both T20. So over here, we're gonna remove this panel, and we're gonna use again our panel removal tool to get underneath. And there's three clips holding it. So there's one right here. There's one lower. And there's one on top. Once it unclips, you just remove it. You have to kind of tilt it and it comes out, and when you're putting it back, these two edges go in first. And if you have, like it happened right now, once we're gonna, as you see, this clip came off, so if that happens to you, you just have to put it back on the panel. So now under the glove box, again, we're using a T20, and there's 1, 2, and 3 screws that we have to remove, and we're gonna go ahead and do that. So now you're gonna drop this panel, and there's one connection here that you just have to pull on, give it enough space to drop it about this far. Now there's 2 more screws left. There's one right here, right on the edge, and then there's one right here. So we're gonna go ahead and remove them also. So now there's the last screw, and it's hiding behind this small cover. So because we removed the side panel, you can just use our hook tool to pop it open. As you can see, there's one more screw there, and it's different from all the other ones. It's the tiniest one. All the screws around the glove box are the same, except for this one. This one is the smallest one, so when you're putting everything back, make sure you put this one into the correct place. As you can see, it's the smallest one, but still uses a T20. So now we're gonna open the glove box and kind of wiggle it out. And these locks, as you can see, they just fell out. When you're putting them back, you have to put the glove box back before putting them in, so we're just gonna leave them inside. And there's one connection here. Just unhook it. So there's, we're gonna mount our module here on top, and as you can see, there's already some holes in the glove box, so we're gonna use these holes to feed our USB connection for the wired CarPlay into here. And you can also, if you don't want to run the microphone anywhere in the A pillar, you can use this hole to run inside the glove box. And this particular car comes in 3 different variations. Sometimes the auxiliary is here, so you'd also run the auxiliary inside of here. That would be kind of shorter version. That would be the easiest version if you have the auxiliary in the glove box. But this particular car has the auxiliary right here. So this special connection for the auxiliary is inside. So we have to run the auxiliary all the way here. But if you have it in the glove box, you can just do it all through here. And the third variation in this E-Class is like the older model, when you don't have auxiliary at all. So you would just connect on both sides of the harness. So you would do the connections behind the harnesses and behind our module. So this is the harness that comes with our kit, and that's the first thing that we're gonna start connecting. And this is the original that we removed from the original stereo. So here we have to transfer the optical wire for the audio. So you're gonna use a small screwdriver or a hook tool. Once you do this clip, we're gonna take the harness that comes with our kit, and we're gonna plug it in into the same position on the outer edge, like that. And we're gonna take the other end, and it's gonna clip in with the original connection. When you're putting it back, the clip has to be open, and this will go into our original stereo. Next, this is the main harness for our module, and the white end is gonna be behind the glove box, and this gray end will connect into here. So we're gonna grab it from the inside, and as you can see, you have to feed the wires on the most outer edge right here, because if you feed them into openings anywhere here, the radio won't have space to go back in. But if you're feeding it the wires all the way at the back, then they will not be in the way when you're putting the radio back. And because there's not that much space, it's very important to keep it on the most outer edge right there, as you can see where I fed this wire. Next, we're gonna take our video cables that come with our kit, and we're gonna take this 2 ends. One is a female end and one is the angle, and then the other ones are both straight. So the straight ones are gonna be towards the glove box, and these oddly shaped ones are gonna be behind the radio. Same thing, we're gonna pull them through. And we're gonna connect the gray one into the gray one. This is the original that we removed from the stereo. And we can have it here. And this one will go back into our original stereo. So now we have these 3 wires here, and we're gonna just plug them into our module. This is the main harness. And this LCD in will go into the LCD in. And then the gray one will go into this dark green one. We already have our antenna connected. So now we're gonna run the auxiliary and the microphone wires. So now we're gonna show you how to run the wire under the center console, because like I mentioned before, there's an auxiliary in the center armrest in this particular car. If your car has an auxiliary or doesn't have an auxiliary in the glove box, you would ignore this step. So now we're gonna, first step is gonna to remove, you just tilt this pocket, and underneath you're gonna see a 10mm bolt, which we're gonna use our extension, and we're gonna go ahead and remove it. Next, we're gonna take our T20 and remove these 2 screws. As you can see, these ones are different from all the other ones you're gonna remove in the car. They look more like wood screws, and that's the ones that go here and hold this panel in place. Now we're gonna grab the panel, tilt it, and remove it. And behind there's 3 clips and 3 connectors. So to undo them, you're gonna release the clips. Here's one. And this one, just you have to click on it. Behind here, you're gonna see a T27. There's 2 bolts, and that's the ones we're gonna remove right now. Now we're gonna open this compartment, and we're gonna take our small screwdriver, which we told you about earlier. And there's 2 small openings here. That's why it needs to be a small one. There's one here and there's one right here. And that's to release the 2 clips. And once you release them, then this panel will come out. We're gonna use our panel removal tool. So we got one. And now we're just gonna tilt it up and away. And when you're putting it back, you first put the lower edge in. Here, and there's 2 clips and 2 connectors, which you have to unclip and remove. Now we have to remove this pocket, and to remove it, there's 2 clips. So there's one here and one over here, and it lifts up. And we're not gonna be disconnecting this connection. We're just gonna put it aside. And here you're gonna see 2 10mm bolts, and we're gonna go ahead and unscrew them right now. So before removing the center console, we're actually gonna make a hole, so that way we can, when we remove the whole thing, we can run the auxiliary. And we're gonna put our hole right below here, so that way it's hidden. So we're gonna use our drill. So the opening has to be big enough to fit the auxiliary that comes with our kit, and it's good. So now we're gonna clean everything up. So we're gonna grab the panel or the center console and lift it up, and then move it towards the back of the car. Once you have it about this far back, we're gonna start lifting it. And when you're lifting it, make sure you're covering with your fingers these 2 edges, because they're quite sharp and they can scratch the dashboard. Once we tilted the center console, we're gonna take our auxiliary, we're gonna feed it here, and then we're gonna catch it from underneath. Here you go. So we're gonna pull the auxiliary through, and at this point, as you can see, this is from us making the hole, so you can just clean up the carpet here. And now we're gonna feed this auxiliary to the back of the glove box. So once we have it here, and now we have it all the way at the back of the glove box. At this point, we're gonna take the console, we're gonna tilt it forward. Same thing when you're putting it back. And again, you're gonna be covering the 2 edges when you're tilting it back. And once it's at this position, we're gonna go ahead and push it forward. And you're gonna check that these wires are not jammed. This main harness wire has to be in this opening, and once it is, As you can see, the panel is back in its place, and then you can put the two 10 millimeters back, and over here now we have the auxiliary. So now we're gonna put the bolts back. So we're gonna take our 10 millimeter, we'll put it inside, and also can put it back. Now the last two bolts that hold the console are the two T27s, and we're gonna put them back. Now we're gonna put this console back, and when you're putting it back, the clip has to be unlocked, and then you lock it in place. Here again, the bottom goes in first. We're gonna take our two T20s and put them back. So we're gonna take our module and we're gonna plug in the auxiliary towards this end of the harness, and you're gonna see audio out, and we plug it in here. So if your car had auxiliary in the glove box, you wouldn't do this step. You would just take the other end of the auxiliary and you would run it into the glove box. And if your car doesn't have auxiliary at all, not in the glove box, not in the center, you would take the auxiliary on one end, you put it to use audio out beside the module, and then on the other end, you would put it into audio in. This is by the radio harness. The last step is to wire the microphone. And there's two ways, like I said. You can either run it into a glove box, because the microphone is only used for Siri or Google Assistant, and you're going to be using original Bluetooth of this car for phone calls. Or we're going to run in this particular car all the way into the A-pillar, because that's what the customer asked for. So here we're going to remove this panel. Again, we're going to use our panel removal tool, same like we did on the passenger side. There's 3 clips, so 2 here. And again, when you're putting it back, you first put these 2 edges in. Now we're gonna grab the weather stripping and pull it down. So with the weather stripping removed, we're gonna pop this cover off. So behind this cover, there's a T20, which we gotta undo. So we're gonna move this panel out of the way. We're gonna take our microphone and we're gonna flip it and get it behind the airbag, because you don't want this wire to be in front of the airbag. With the microphone in, we're gonna put the screw back, and then you're gonna close this panel, and we're gonna feed the wire down. And while we're doing that, we're putting the weather stripping back. And from this step, we're gonna feed the wire all the way to the back of the radio. And for this task, to feed the wire under the steering wheel, we're gonna use our rod, which we made from a coat hanger. So now we have our rod, and it's on one end it's here, and on the other is behind the stereo. You have to keep the rod almost straight, and there's a path to get right behind the stereo. Once you have it there, we're gonna take this end and we're gonna tape it to this end of the rod. Make sure you tape it well so it doesn't get lost halfway. And now we're gonna slowly pull it through. And now we have it on the inside. And at this point, you can put this panel back. So final step for the microphone, along with all the other wires, is to get it behind and into behind the glove box. Now we're gonna take our module and put it into the microphone slot. So we're gonna start plugging everything in. So this is the wire for the video that we fed from our module, and it goes into the gray connector. Now we're gonna plug in all the original connections, so they just go by color. This other pink one, which stays the same, will go into the pink one. And now we're gonna plug in the main harness. So with the clip released, we're gonna line it up with the stereo. And once it's in, you're just gonna clip it back and make sure it clips in. Now we're gonna put the radio back inside, and it's in the dashboard. And when you're doing that, the best thing to do is to put, because now there's not that much space and you have these extra wires, This wire will go in the middle and you have to drop it. There's like a cavity there. That way there's enough space for the radio to go back inside. And you also got to make sure you pull out this wire, which connects over here. And now the radio is back in place, and then you have these 3 connections which you have to be loose. And at this point, this is a good time to test everything to make sure that the module is working. So we're gonna plug in this adapter, and we're gonna plug in our auxiliary which we ran. So this will feed the sound. And at this point, you can turn the ignition on. When you're testing everything for the first time, we're gonna use the wired method. So we're gonna wire this USB into the glove box. So this is for the wired CarPlay, and for testing it's a good option. So we're gonna plug in the USB, and the other end we're gonna plug into our iPhone. First thing you gotta do is select the audio, and you're gonna select aux, and then you're gonna hold the back button, and now you have CarPlay showing because we connected our iPhone. So you just gotta go to your music, press play to make sure that the sound is playing, and make sure that the controls are controlling CarPlay. So everything is working. And at this point, now we're gonna mount the module. And so last thing, we're gonna drop this USB to the original opening of the glove box. There was a hole here already. So this is for wired CarPlay. We're gonna keep the module all the way here. So we're gonna tuck it inside there. Once you have it in there, you gotta move all the wires around so there's space for the glove box to go in. We're gonna also plug in this connection on top of the glove box. This is like a main guide clip for the glove box. So you gotta make sure that there's no wire in the way of that one. And we're gonna start putting everything back. So once you have the glove box in place, we're gonna start putting all the bolts back. And here we have the USB which we ran. Once we put these bolts, we're gonna show you how to put the locks back. As mentioned before, the small screw, it's smaller in diameter of the head. It goes right in the corner here, and it gets covered by this cover. So the top goes in first, and then you click it in. And now we're gonna do all the bolts under the glove box. So there's one screw here. Now there's one right here. Now we're gonna connect the connection for this in this corner. And once it's connected, you gotta bend this panel around. And again, there's 3 screws holding this panel underneath. With glove box secured, now we're gonna reinstall this panel. Just clips in. So now we're gonna put in the locks. So you slide them in, and you gotta get them over this clip. Same with this side. 2 last bolts to put in are the ones on top of the stereo. So now we're putting the centerpiece back. You have to plug in these 3 connections back. You're gonna open the glove box to get the locks a little loose. So we're gonna start from the passenger side. And once the panel is in place, we're gonna do the locks. You just push them up. And that's it. Now the installation is complete, and we're gonna test everything for the final time. So we're gonna connect the USB to our iPhone, select the source of auxiliary, I'm gonna press play. So everything is playing. The controls are working for the CarPlay. And at this point, the installation is complete. So again, I hope you like this video, and we'll see you next time.